The alarm clock's harsh buzz jolted Marcus awake at 5:30 a.m. His one-bedroom apartment in Pinewood, Texas, felt especially empty this morning. Framed teaching certificates hung next to a faded photograph of his father in military dress uniform. Marcus rubbed his eyes, trying to shake off the familiar heaviness that seemed to follow him lately. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Another day, another dollar, he muttered, the phrase an echo of his father's morning ritual. At 34, Marcus had imagined his life would look different by now. The substitute teaching position at Pinewood High was supposed to be temporary while he completed his master's degree. That was 5 years ago, before his father's medical bills had drained his savings and derailed his plans. He dressed quickly, pulling on khaki slacks and a navy button-down that had seen better days. His wardrobe, like much of his life, was functional but uninspiring. The mirror reflected a man with kind eyes and premature worry lines across his forehead. His dark hair was cut short and practical, another habit inherited from his military father. The drive to Pinewood High took exactly 17 minutes in his 2005 Honda Civic. Marcus knew every pothole and turn by heart. The car's radio was permanently tuned to the local classical station, one of the few luxuries he allowed himself. Today, it was playing Bach's Cello Suite No. 1, the notes providing a momentary escape from his thoughts. Pinewood High School loomed ahead, a sprawling brick building that served the small community of 15,000. The school had seen better days, much like the town itself. Once a thriving manufacturing hub, Pinewood had been slowly declining since the factory closures in the early 2000s. Only growth industry seemed to be the new Walmart supercenter that had opened on the edge of town 2 years ago. Marcus parked in his usual spot at the far end of the teacher's lot. As a substitute, he wasn't entitled to the covered parking reserved for full-time staff. Another small reminder of his perpetual temporary status. "Morning, Mr. Reeves," called out Dwayne Miller, the school security guard, who was always the first to arrive. "Covering for Mrs. Henderson again." "Third day this week," Marcus confirmed with a nod. "Her son's still in the hospital." "Lucky. She's got you to step in," Dwayne said, holding the door open. "Not many subs willing to tackle her a P history class." Marcus shrugged off the compliment. "Just doing my job." The truth was, Marcus loved teaching the P history class. These were the serious students, the ones who actually cared about learning, who asked questions that required thought. For a few hours, he could pretend he was the real teacher, not just a placeholder. "Mr. Reeves," Principal Chambers called out as Marcus signed in at the front office. "Got a minute?" Chambers was a tall, imposing figure with a perpetual look of mild disappointment. He'd been running Pinewood High with an iron fist for over 15 years, and everyone, including the other administrators, walked carefully around him. "Of course, sir," Marcus replied, following him into his office. The principal's office was immaculate and intimidating, with awards and certificates covering one wall and a large window, overlooking the school's neglected football field on the other. "I've been reviewing the substitute roster," Chambers began, shuffling through papers on his desk. "You've been with us for 5 years now?" "Yes, sir. Going on 6 in September." Chambers nodded, his expression unreadable. "And still, no progress on that teaching certification?" Marcus felt his shoulders tense. "I'm still taking classes when I can afford them. I've completed about half the requirements." "I see." Chambers leaned back in his chair. "You know, Marcus, you're one of our most requested substitutes. The students respond well to you, and the teachers know their classes are in good hands. When you cover." "Thank you, sir. But I can't keep justifying your position to the board without progress toward certification. The district has new policies about long-term substitutes." Marcus felt a familiar knot form in his stomach. What kind of policies? They're capping substitute periods at 3 years now. Without certification, we'll need to replace you with someone on track for full credentials. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Teaching at Pinewood was the one stable thing in his life, the one place he felt he made a difference. I understand, he managed to say, his voice carefully controlled. How long do I have? End of this semester. If you can show significant progress toward certification by then, I might be able to argue for an exception. Marcus nodded, his mind racing through calculations. Tuition costs, bills, his father's ongoing care at the assisted living facility. The numbers didn't add up, no matter how he juggled them. I appreciate the heads up, he said, rising from his chair. I'll figure something out. Chambers gave him a look that might have been sympathy. You're good with these kids, Reeves. Find a way to make it work. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The first bell rang. As Marcus left the office, students flooding the hallways in a cacophony of voices and slamming lockers. He made his way to Mrs. Henderson's classroom, forcing a smile as he went. The students didn't need to know about his problems. The AP history class was discussing World War II veterans and their return to civilian life. Marcus had prepared additional materials, bringing in articles and photographs that weren't in the standard curriculum. Teaching was the one area where he never cut corners, even if the extra effort went unnoticed by everyone except the students. Mr. Reeves, called out Alicia Mendez, one of his brightest students. My grandfather was a Vietnam veteran. He never talks about it, though. Why do you think some veterans share their stories and others don't? It was the kind of thoughtful question Marcus loved. That's an excellent question, Alicia. The experience of war affects everyone differently. Some find healing in sharing their stories, while others prefer to keep those memories private. It's important that we respect both approaches. My uncle served in Iraq, added Jason Cooper from the back row. He says nobody gets it unless they were there, Marcus nodded. There's truth to that. Well, we can study history and listen to first-hand accounts. There's an experiential gap that's difficult to bridge. That's why it's so important that we listen when veterans do choose to share their experiences. The discussion continued, students engaging with the material in ways that made Marcus's heart swell with pride. This was why he taught, why he endured the uncertainty and financial strain. In moments like these, he felt he was making a genuine difference. When the final bell rang at 3:15 p.m., Marcus stayed behind to grade papers. The school emptied quickly, the sudden silence a stark contrast to the day's chaos. It was nearly 5 p.m. when he finally packed up his worn leather messenger bag and headed to his car. His phone buzzed with a text from Sunnyvale Assisted Living. Monthly bill processed. Payment due in 5 days. Another reminder of the financial tightrope he walked every month. Marcus sighed, calculating how much was left in his checking account. Not enough. He would need to pick up extra shifts somewhere. The local diner where he occasionally waited tables on weekends might have additional hours, or maybe the tutoring center at the community college needed help with midterms approaching. He was so lost in thought that he almost missed the turn for Walmart. The supercenter was his last stop before heading home. He needed to restock on basics and pick up the discounted medications his father's insurance didn't fully cover. Store was crowded with after-work shoppers, the harsh fluorescent lighting making everyone look tired and washed out. Marcus grabbed a cart and moved methodically through his list. Bread, eggs, coffee, canned soup that was on sale, store brand, cereal. Each item carefully selected for maximum economy. In the pharmacy section, he handed over his father's prescription to the technician behind the counter. That'll be 20 minutes, Mr. Reeves, she said with a practiced smile. No problem. I'll Finish my shopping and come back." As he turned away from the counter, a commotion near the front of the store caught his attention. Raised voices carried across the aisles, unusual enough in the typically subdued Walmart, to draw curious stares. Marcus hesitated, then pushed his cart toward the disturbance. A small crowd had gathered near the entrance, where a store manager, in a blue vest, was confronting an elderly man. The older man wore a faded service cap with military pins, his thin frame practically drowning in a jacket that had once fit a much larger person. "Sir, you can't solicit donations on store property," the manager was saying, his voice sharp with impatience. "I've told you this before." "I'm not soliciting," the older man replied, his voice quavering slightly. "I'm just sitting here with my sign. People choose to donate." Marcus moved closer, noticing the small cardboard sign propped against a folding chair. "Vietnam veteran. Need help with heating bill. God bless. It doesn't matter what you call it," the manager continued, his voice rising. "It's against store policy. You need to pack up and leave now, or I'm calling the police." The elderly veteran's face flushed with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. "I fought for this country. I lost friends, lost part of myself over there. And I can't even sit outside a store with a sign." People in the growing crowd shifted uncomfortably, many averting their eyes from the unfolding scene. A woman with a small child tugged her daughter away. Two teenage boys snickered behind their phones, one obviously recording the confrontation. Something in Marcus snapped. He stepped forward, positioning himself between the manager and the veteran. "Excuse me," he said, his teacher's voice cutting through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" The manager turned to him with obvious irritation. "This doesn't concern you, sir." "It's a store matter." Marcus stood his ground. "I think it concerns all of us when a veteran is being treated this way. Look, I'm just enforcing company policy. No solicitation on the premises." Marcus glanced at the veteran, noting the slight tremor in his hands, the worn edges of his service cap, the weathered dignity in his posture. Then he looked back at the manager, whose name tag read Frank. "Frank, I understand you have policies to follow. But surely there's a more respectful way to handle this situation. This man served our country." Frank's face hardened. "Rules are rules. He needs to leave now." The crowd had grown larger, people pretending to shop while clearly watching the drama unfold. Marcus felt a flutter of anxiety. He'd never been one for public confrontations, but something about the veteran's quiet dignity and the manager's dismissive attitude kept him rooted in place. "My father is a veteran," Marcus said, his voice steady but loud enough for the onlookers to hear. "He's in assisted living now, his health broken by his service. Every day I see how this country forgets the people who sacrificed everything for it. I can't stand by and watch it happen again." A murmur ran through the crowd. Frank glanced around nervously, suddenly aware of the audience. "Sir, I respect veterans, but—" "No, you don't," Marcus interrupted, surprising himself with his boldness. "Respect isn't just words. It's actions. It's recognizing that this man probably didn't stand in the cold with a sign because he wanted to. He did it because he had to." The elderly veteran looked up at Marcus with an expression of surprised gratitude. Frank's walkie-talkie crackled. "Frank, what's going on up there?" "Customers are saying there's some kind of disturbance." Before Frank could respond, a woman stepped forward from the crowd. "I'd like to pay this gentleman's heating bill," she announced. "How much is it, sir?" The veteran blinked in surprise. $217, he replied softly. "I'll match that," called another voice from the crowd. A middle-aged man in work clothes stepped forward. Frank looked increasingly uncomfortable as more people began to approach, some offering money, others simply wanting to shake the veteran's hand or thank him for his service. "This is still against store policy," Frank muttered, but his words lacked conviction. Marcus turned to him. "Maybe it's time to reconsider some policies, Frank, or at least how they're enforced. A young woman had begun recording the scene on her phone. "This is amazing," she said to no one in particular. "I'm putting this on TikTok right now." The elderly veteran stood shakily, overwhelmed by the sudden attention. "I don't know what to say," he murmured. "I just needed help with one bill. I never expected." "What's your name, sir?" Marcus asked gently. Harold Jenkins. Served with the 101st Airborne in Vietnam." Marcus extended his hand. "Marcus Reeves. My father was Marines, Iraq and Afghanistan." "It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Jenkins." As they shook hands, a store security guard approached, followed by a woman in a more elaborate version of the Walmart uniform, clearly higher management. "What's happening here?" she asked, taking in the scene with a practiced eye. Frank began to explain, but she cut him off with a raised hand and turned to Marcus and Harold instead. "I'm Lisa Winters, store director," she said. "Could someone please explain the situation?" Before Marcus could speak, several customers began talking at once, describing how Frank had confronted the elderly veteran and how Marcus had intervened. Lisa listened carefully, her expression neutral but attentive. "Mr. Jenkins," she said when the voices quieted, "I apologize for any distress this situation has caused you. While we do have policies about solicitation, they're not intended to disrespect veterans or anyone genuinely in need." She turned to Frank. "We'll discuss this further in my office. For now, please return to your department." Frank nodded stiffly and walked away, pointedly avoiding eye contact with anyone. Lisa addressed Harold again. "Mr. Jenkins, would you be comfortable coming to my office to discuss how we might better assist veterans in our community? Perhaps there's a more formal way we could help." Harold looked stunned by the turn of events. "Yes, ma'am, that would be fine. And you are?" Lisa turned to Marcus. "Marcus Reeves. I'm just a customer who happened to be here." "Well, Mr. Reeves, I'd appreciate it if you'd join us as well. Your perspective might be valuable." As they followed Lisa toward the back of the store, Harold leaned toward Marcus. "Thank you, son. Most people just walk by, pretend they don't see me." "No one should treat a veteran that way," Marcus replied. "My father always says that how we treat our veterans shows what kind of nation we really are." Lisa led them to a small but tidy office near the employee break room. She offered them seats and bottles of water before taking her own chair behind a desk cluttered with schedules and inventory reports. "Mr. Jenkins, first let me personally apologize for your experience today. That's not how we want to treat any customer, especially someone who served our country." Harold nodded, his weathered hands fidgeting with his service cap. "I understand rules are rules, ma'am. I wasn't trying to cause trouble. May I ask why you chose our store entrance rather than applying for assistance through veteran services?" Lisa asked gently. Harold's expression clouded. "Been trying that route for months. Paperwork gets lost, appointments get canceled, always need one more form. Meanwhile, the heating company doesn't care about forms. They just shut you off." Marcus felt a pang of recognition. His father had faced similar bureaucratic nightmares trying to access his benefits. "That's unfortunately a common experience," Marcus added. "The systems designed to help veterans are often difficult to navigate, especially for older vets who may not be comfortable with technology or have transportation to multiple appointments." Lisa nodded thoughtfully. "I have a brother who served. I've seen some of these challenges firsthand." She turned back to Harold. "Mr. Jenkins, with your permission, I'd like to do two things. First, I'd like to cover your heating bill personally. Not as charity, but as a thank you for your service." Harold began to protest, but she continued. "Second, I'd like to explore setting up a more formal support system here at the store. Perhaps a monthly resource day where veterans can connect with services, or even a donation program customers could contribute to voluntarily." "That's very generous," Harold said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's the least we can do," Lisa replied. She turned to Marcus. "Mr. Reeves, would you be interested in helping coordinate something like this? You seem to understand these issues and clearly care about veterans." Marcus blinked in surprise. "I'd be honored, but I should mention I'm just a substitute teacher. I don't have any formal experience with veteran services. Sometimes passion and the right perspective are more valuable than formal qualifications," Lisa said. "And if your father is a veteran, you have first-hand experience with the challenges families face." Marcus thought about Principal Chambers' warning earlier that day, about his precarious financial situation, about the long hours he already worked. He should say no. He didn't have time for another commitment. But then he looked at Harold, at the hope beginning to replace the resignation in the older man's eyes, and found himself nodding. "I'd be happy to help however I can," he said. What none of them knew as they sat in that small office was that the young woman's TikTok video was already spreading across social media like wildfire. By morning, "Teacher defends veteran at Walmart" would have over 1 million views. By the following week, it would catch the attention of a local news station. And within a month, it would reach someone with the power to change everything. But at that moment, all Marcus knew was that he'd stood up for what was right, even when it was uncomfortable. His father would have been proud. And somehow, that was enough. As he finally headed home that evening, prescription and groceries in hand, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. A sense that perhaps his perpetual temporary status, always the substitute and never the real thing, had prepared him for this moment. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks is exactly the one who needs to step forward. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Reeves, this is Harold Jenkins. The nice lady at Walmart gave me your number. Just wanted to say thank you again for today. It's been a long time since someone stood up for me like that." Marcus smiled as he typed his reply. "No thanks needed, Mr. Jenkins. It was the right thing to do." What Marcus couldn't know was that his simple act of decency would soon spiral into something much larger than he could imagine. The military convoys were still weeks away, and the eyes of a nation had not yet turned to the small town of Pinewood, Texas. But the wheels had been set in motion, and nothing in Marcus Reeves' carefully structured, perpetually temporary life would ever be the same again. "Care to explain why my phone has been ringing non-stop with calls about one of our substitute teachers?" Chambers asked, his expression unreadable as Marcus settled into the now familiar chair across from his desk. "I am not sure what you mean, sir," Marcus replied honestly. Chambers turned his computer monitor toward Marcus. On the screen was the TikTok video now with over 2 million views. The caption read, "Teacher stands up for homeless veteran when no one else would. #respect, #veterans, #humanity." Marcus watched in stunned silence as the scene from Walmart played out. The video had been edited to highlight his confrontation with Frank, capturing the moment he had stepped between the manager and Harold Jenkins. The comment section overflowed with praise. "This is what a real hero looks like, and why cannot all teachers be like this guy?" "I did not know anyone was recording," Marcus said quietly when the video ended. Clearly, Chambers leaned back in his chair. "The district office has received calls from 3 local news stations wanting interviews with you. The superintendent is concerned about potential liability issues." Marcus felt his heart sink. "Liability? I did not do anything wrong." "You inserted yourself into a situation that could have escalated. You identified yourself as a teacher. There are concerns about how this reflects on the district. I was just shopping after school hours. What I did had nothing to do with my job here." Chambers sighed, removing his glasses to rub the bridge of his nose. These days teachers are never really off duty in the public eye, especially when videos go viral. Marcus braced himself for the worst. After yesterday's warning about his position, this would surely be the final straw. "Am I being fired?" To his surprise, Chambers actually chuckled. "Fired? For defending a veteran?" In Texas, The PR nightmare would be unimaginable. He replaced his glasses. No, Marcus. I called you in here because the superintendent wants you to do those interviews. What? The district has been fighting for increased funding for years. This kind of positive publicity is priceless. They want you to represent Pinewood schools. Talk about how your teaching values influenced your actions, that sort of thing. Marcus struggled to process this unexpected turn. But just yesterday, you were telling me my position might be eliminated. That was yesterday. Chambers smiled thinly. Today you are the teacher everyone wants their child to have. Funny how things change. As Marcus left the office in a daze, his phone buzzed with a text from Lisa Winters, the Walmart store director. Video has gone viral. Corporate office called. They want to discuss veteran support program ASAP. Can you meet this afternoon? The rest of the day passed in a blur. Students asked for selfies. Teachers who had barely acknowledged him for years suddenly wanted to eat lunch with him. By the time the final bell rang, Marcus felt like he had stepped into someone else's life. He drove directly to Walmart after school, still wearing his button-down shirt and tie. Lisa met him at the entrance, her professional demeanor barely concealing her excitement. Corporate is thrilled, she said as she led him to her office. They are calling it a community engagement opportunity. The regional director is on a video call in 5 minutes. Marcus followed her in stunned silence. Just 24 hours ago, he had been an invisible substitute teacher, struggling to make ends meet. Now he was meeting with Walmart executives. The video call was brief but intense. The regional director, a polished woman named Vanessa Chun, wasted no time with pleasantries. Mr. Reeves, what you did yesterday aligns perfectly with our new community impact initiative. We would like to formalize the veteran support program. Ms. Winters suggested and use the Pinewood store as a pilot location. With your involvement, of course. I am honored, but I should be clear I do not have professional experience with veteran services, Marcus cautioned. What you have is authenticity, Vanessa replied. That cannot be trained. We will provide resources and connections to professional organizations. We need someone who genuinely cares to be the public face. By the time the call ended, Marcus had been offered a part-time position as veteran support coordinator for the Pinewood Walmart, with flexible hours that would work around his teaching schedule. The compensation was not life-changing, but it would help ease his financial strain. There is someone else who wants to see you, Lisa said as the call concluded. She led Marcus to the break room where Harold Jenkins was waiting, looking considerably more rested than the day before. Mr. Reeves Herald said, standing shakily. Or should I call you internet famous now? Marcus laughed, extending his hand. Please, it is just Marcus. Well, just Marcus, you have caused quite a stir. My granddaughter called this morning saying I am all over her Facetube or TikTok or whatever it is called. That makes two of us who are surprised, Marcus replied. How are you doing, Mr. Jenkins? Better than yesterday. Ms. Winters here not only took care of my heating bill, but drove me to the VA office herself this morning. Got more accomplished in 2 hours than I had in 6 months. Lisa smiled modestly. Sometimes these agencies just need a little corporate pressure. As they discussed plans for the veteran support program, Marcus's phone buzzed continuously with notifications. The local news stations had found his personal social media accounts and were sending interview requests. Friends he had not spoken to in years were messaging to check if the hero teacher was really him. By evening, Marcus was exhausted, but could not deny the strange energy coursing through him. For the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something that mattered, something beyond just filling in the gaps. He stopped by Sunnyvale Assisted Living on his way home, eager to share the day's events with his father. Richard Reeves had good days and bad days since his stroke 3 years ago. Today, fortunately, was one of the better ones. Dad, you will not believe what has happened. Marcus began, sitting beside the recliner where his father spent most of his time. Richard Reeves listened intently as his son recounted the events at Walmart and the subsequent viral video. When Marcus finished, Richard reached for his communication board. His stroke had left him with limited speech, and pointed to the letters to spell out a message. "Proud of you. I just did what you would have done," Marcus replied, his throat tight with emotion. Richard shook his head slowly and laboriously spelled out, "Did what I taught you." The distinction mattered. Richard had always emphasized that true character was not about heroic moments, but consistent values practiced daily. Marcus had absorbed those lessons through observation, more than instruction, watching his father quietly help neighbors defend the vulnerable and stand up for what was right without seeking recognition. As Marcus drove home that night, he reflected on how quickly life could change. One moment of authentic action had created opportunities he could not have imagined. But with those opportunities came responsibilities and expectations. Could he live up to them? The next morning brought the first tangible sign that the viral video had moved beyond social media curiosity to something more substantial. Marcus arrived at school to find a news van from the local CBS affiliate parked in the visitor lot. Principal Chambers was waiting for him at the entrance, looking simultaneously anxious and pleased. "They want to interview you before classes start," Chambers explained, ushering Marcus inside. The superintendent approved it, thought it would be good for the district. The interview was brief but thoughtful. The reporter, a young woman named Aisha Baker, seemed genuinely interested in Marcus's perspective, rather than just seeking a sensationalist angle. "What made you step in when others were just watching?" she asked. Marcus considered the question carefully. "I think we all have moments where we have to decide what kind of person we want to be. In that moment, I could not be someone who just walked by." "You mentioned your father is a veteran. How has that influenced your outlook?" "My father taught me that service does not end when the uniform comes off. Whether you are a veteran, a teacher, or just a citizen, we all have an obligation to look out for each other." By lunchtime, clips from the interview were already circulating online. Marcus's phone continued to buzz with notifications, but he had muted most of them to focus on teaching. In Mrs. Henderson's AP history class, the students were eager to discuss the viral video rather than World War II. "Mr. Reeves, my dad says you should run for mayor or something," said Jason Cooper. Marcus laughed. "I think I will stick to teaching. Politics is not really my thing." "But do not you want to use your platform?" asked Alicia Mendez. "You could really make a difference now." The question gave Marcus pause. "I am not sure having a viral moment qualifies as a platform, Alicia. But it is a good reminder that we all have more influence than we realize, even without millions of views." After school, Marcus headed to Walmart for his first official day as Veteran Support Coordinator. Lisa had cleared a small office space near customer service and provided him with a laptop, a phone, and a stack of materials about veteran benefit programs. "Corporate sent over some resources," she explained. "And we have already had calls from 3 veteran service organizations wanting to partner with us." "That was fast," Marcus remarked, scanning the materials. "That's what happens when something goes viral for the right reasons," Lisa replied. "People want to be part of positive change." As Marcus was settling in, Harold Jenkins appeared at his door, accompanied by 2 other elderly men. "Hope you don't mind," Harold said. "These are some buddies from my old unit. Told them about what you're doing here." The men introduced themselves as Frank Delgado and William Park, both Vietnam veterans like Harold. They had seen the video and wanted to meet Marcus personally. "Most people look right through us," William said bluntly. "Like we're ghosts or something. Or they give you that fake thank you for your service while they're already walking away," Frank added. "What you did for Harold, standing up to that manager, that was real," William continued. "We appreciate it." Marcus felt humbled by their gratitude. "I just did what anyone should do." "But that's just it," Frank said. "Most people don't. They see problems and figure someone else will handle it." The conversation shifted to the veterans' experiences navigating the VA system and other support services. Marcus took notes, recognizing patterns in their struggles that mirrored his father's experiences. The bureaucratic maze, the endless paperwork, the appointments scheduled months apart. It all created barriers that many veterans, especially older ones, couldn't overcome alone. "What if we created a buddy system?" Marcus suggested. "Pair up veterans who know the system with those who are struggling to navigate it?" Harold nodded enthusiastically. "Like battle buddies, never leave a man behind." "Exactly. And maybe we could get volunteer drivers to help with transportation to appointments." The ideas flowed freely as they discussed possibilities. By the time the veterans left 2 hours later, Marcus had pages of notes and a clearer vision for what the support program could become, not just a corporate initiative but a genuine community resource. As he was organizing his notes, Lisa appeared at his door again. "There's someone here to see you," she said, her expression suggesting this wasn't an ordinary visitor. Marcus looked up to see a uniformed army officer standing behind her. The man stepped forward, extending his hand. "Captain James Rodriguez, Army Recruitment Office, San Antonio. Could I have a few minutes of your time, Mr. Reeves?" Confused but curious, Marcus welcomed the captain into his small office. Captain Rodriguez declined the offer to sit, instead standing at parade rest as he explained his presence. "Your video has caught the attention of my commanding officers," he said. "The Army is always looking for stories that demonstrate the values we want to instill in our recruits. Your defense of a veteran exemplifies the kind of civilian-military relationship we strive to promote." "I appreciate that, Captain, but I'm not sure I understand why you're here." "We'd like to feature your story in a recruitment campaign. Nothing extensive, just a short feature about civilian support for veterans. It would involve a professional crew coming to Pinewood for a day or two." Marcus was taken aback. "A recruitment campaign? I'm just a teacher who did what anyone should do." Captain Rodriguez smiled slightly. "With respect, Mr. Reeves, if everyone did what you did, my job would be much easier. Young people considering military service want to know they'll be valued when they return to civilian life. Your actions send that message." The captain left his card, asking Marcus to consider the proposal. As he departed, he added casually, "By the way, the Army isn't the only branch interested. I suggest you check your email when you have a chance." Sure enough, when Marcus checked his inbox that evening, he found messages from representatives of the Navy, Air Force, and Marines, all expressing interest in similar projects. The Marine Corps' message particularly caught his attention, given his father's service history. The next morning brought another surprise. As Marcus pulled into the school parking lot, he noticed a group of students gathered around a man in a Marine Corps dress uniform. As he approached, he recognized the district superintendent, Dr. Evans, standing with the Marine. "Ah, Mr. Reeves," Dr. Evans called out. "Perfect timing. This is Colonel Michael Chun from the Marine Corps' Public Affairs Office. He'd like to speak with you." Colonel Chun was impressive in his dress blues, his posture impeccable, his handshake firm. "Mr. Reeves, your actions have resonated within the military community. The Commandant himself saw the video and was moved by your defense of a veteran from another branch. That kind of cross-service respect exemplifies what we call the Brotherhood of Arms." Marcus glanced at Dr. Evans, who was beaming with barely contained excitement. Clearly, having a Marine colonel visit Pinewood High was an unprecedented honor for the small school. "The Commandant would like to extend a personal invitation for you to attend the Marine Corps' birthday ball in Washington next month," Colonel Chun continued. As his special guest, the students nearby gasped audibly. Even Marcus struggled to maintain his composure. The Marine Corps' birthday ball was a prestigious event attended by high-ranking officials and honored guests. "That's incredibly generous," Marcus managed to say. "But I'm not sure I deserve such an honor." "It's not about deserving, Mr. Reeves. It's about recognizing those who embody the values we hold dear." Your simple act of standing up for a veteran when others wouldn't, that resonates with every Marine who's ever served. The invitation was just the beginning. Throughout the day, Marcus received calls and emails from various military organizations and veteran advocacy groups. Each expressed gratitude for his actions and offered opportunities for involvement in their programs. By the end of the school day, Marcus felt overwhelmed by the attention. He retreated to Mrs. Henderson's empty classroom to gather his thoughts before heading to Walmart for his afternoon shift. "Quite a day, huh?" Principal Chambers said, appearing in the doorway. His tone was friendly, but carried an undercurrent of something Marcus couldn't quite identify. "It's been unexpected," Marcus admitted. Chambers entered the room, closing the door behind him. "The superintendent is ecstatic. Says this is the best publicity the district has had in years. I'm glad it's helping the school." "Indeed." Chambers settled into a student desk across from Marcus. "But I'm curious, what are you getting out of all this?" The question caught Marcus off guard. "What do you mean?" "Marine Corps' ball invitations, Army recruitment campaigns, media attention. These are valuable connections, Marcus. The kind that could open doors for someone looking to advance their career." Marcus felt a flicker of irritation. "I wasn't thinking about career advancement when I helped Mr. Jenkins. I was just doing what seemed right." Of course," Chambers backpedaled slightly. "I didn't mean to imply otherwise. I'm just suggesting that you might consider how to leverage this moment for your future. Perhaps negotiate for a full-time position with benefits, for instance." The implication was clear. Chambers saw Marcus's sudden fame as transactional, something to be traded for personal gain. The thought left a sour taste in his mouth. "I appreciate the advice," Marcus said carefully. "But right now, I'm more focused on making sure this veteran support program at Walmart actually helps people who need it." Chambers nodded, though his expression suggested he thought Marcus was missing an opportunity. "Well, keep me informed of your military connections. The district is always looking for potential partnerships for our JROTC program." After Chambers left, Marcus sat alone in the classroom, reflecting on the conversation. Was he naive not to be thinking about personal advancement? His father had always emphasized that doing the right thing was its own reward. But his father wasn't struggling to pay bills on a substitute teacher's salary. At Walmart that afternoon, Marcus found his small office space transformed. Corporate had delivered official signage, brochures, and even a custom nameplate for his desk. The customer service area now featured a prominent Veteran Support Center sign with his hours listed below. "They're not wasting any time," Lisa commented as she showed him the changes. "Corporate's already talking about rolling this out nationwide. If our pilot goes well." Before Marcus could respond, his phone rang. It was Aisha Baker from the local CBS affiliate. "Mr. Reeves, our story about you has been picked up by the national news. CBS Evening News wants to do a follow-up segment. Are you available for an interview tomorrow?" The pace of events was beginning to feel surreal. As Marcus navigated through his afternoon meetings with veterans seeking assistance, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching someone else's life unfold. The quiet substitute teacher who had always operated on the periphery was suddenly at the center of attention. Harold Jenkins stopped by near closing time, bringing 2 more veterans with him. "Word's spreading," he explained. "These fellas heard about what you're doing here and wanted to see for themselves." The new veterans, both Gulf War era, were initially skeptical. "No offense," said one who introduced himself as Ray, "but we've seen these corporate PR stunts before. Big announcement, nice photo op, then nothing changes." "That's a fair concern," Marcus acknowledged. "I can't promise what this will become, but I can promise you that I'm here for the long haul, not just while the cameras are rolling." Ray studied him carefully. "Harold says you're the real deal. Says your father's a Marine." "Yes, sir. 20 years of service. 2 tours in Iraq, one in Afghanistan. He's in assisted living now after a stroke. Ray's expression softened slightly. Then you understand. I understand enough to know that I don't fully understand what you've been through, Marcus replied honestly. But I'm willing to listen and learn. The conversation shifted to practical matters. How to navigate the VA system, what benefits. The veterans might be eligible for transportation challenges for medical appointments. Marcus took notes, asking questions and proposing potential solutions. By the time they left, even Ray seemed cautiously optimistic. I've got some buddies who could use this kind of help, he admitted. Mind if I send them your way? That's exactly what we're here for, Marcus assured him. As he was preparing to close up for the day, Lisa appeared at his door again. There's something you should see, she said, gesturing for him to follow her to the front entrance. Marcus stepped outside to an unexpected sight. In the parking lot, a group of about 20 people had gathered. Some held signs reading, "Thank you, Marcus," and "Veterans Matter." Others wore military-themed clothing or service caps similar to Herald's. They've been arriving for the past hour, Lisa explained. Word spreading through veteran networks about what you did and what we're trying to build here. A man separated from the group and approached them. He was middle-aged with the distinct bearing of military service despite his civilian clothes. Mr. Reeves? I'm Sergeant Major Robert Holloway, retired. These folks and I wanted to thank you personally for standing up for Harold Jenkins. It might seem like a small thing to you, but in a world where veterans often feel forgotten, it means everything. Marcus was deeply moved. I appreciate that, Sergeant Major, but I'm just trying to help where I can. Sometimes that's all it takes, Holloway replied. One person deciding to help where they can. As Marcus drove home that evening, his mind raced with the day's events. The media attention, the military interest, the gathering of veterans. It all stemmed from one spontaneous moment of standing up for what he believed was right. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Reeves, this is Colonel Chun. The Commandant asked me to inform you that arrangements are being made for your father to attend the birthday ball as well, with appropriate medical support. Please call to discuss details. Marcus pulled over, overcome with emotion. His father, who had given so much and received so little in return, would experience the honor and recognition he deserved. For the first time since his viral moment, Marcus felt the full weight of what was happening. Not just for himself, but for his father and for veterans like Harold Jenkins, who had been invisible for too long. What Marcus didn't know yet was that the gathering in the Walmart parking lot was just the beginning. The ripples from his simple act of decency were spreading farther and faster than anyone could have predicted. Within days, veterans groups across the state would mobilize. And soon, the first military convoys would begin their journey to Pinewood, Texas, carrying something that would transform not just Marcus's life, but the entire community. Hello? He answered, his voice thick with sleep. Mr. Reeves? This is Officer Dawson with Pinewood Police Department. There's no emergency, but we have a situation developing at the Walmart that you should be aware of. Marcus sat up, instantly alert. What kind of situation? Approximately 30 vehicles have arrived in the parking lot over the past hour. Military veterans mostly. They're setting up some kind of, well, I'm not sure what to call it. A gathering? A rally? They're asking. For you specifically. For me? Marcus swung his legs over the side of the bed. Are they causing problems? No, sir. They're very organized, very respectful. But the store doesn't open until 7, and we've got quite a crowd forming. Store management requested police presence as a precaution, but they specifically asked U.S. to contact you before taking any action. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Marcus promised, already reaching for his clothes. The pre-dawn air was cool as Marcus pulled into the Walmart parking lot. The scene that greeted him was unlike anything he could have imagined. At least 50 vehicles were now parked in neat rows at the far end of the lot. American flags flew. From many of them, along with military service banners. Men and women of various ages moved with purpose, setting up folding tables and canopies. Officer Dawson met him at the entrance, where Lisa Winters was already waiting, looking both concerned and intrigued. They started arriving around 4 a.m., Lisa explained. The night manager called me when he realized the scale of what was happening. Do we know what they want? Marcus asked, surveying the growing assembly. They're saying they're here to support your veteran initiative, Officer Dawson replied. There's someone calling himself the coordinator who asked to speak with you when you arrived. Marcus nodded and followed Officer Dawson toward the gathering. As they approached, he recognized Sergeant Major Holloway from the previous day, speaking, with a group of veterans wearing hats and jackets identifying their military service. Holloway spotted Marcus and strode forward to meet him, extending his hand. Mr. Reeves, thank you for coming so early. I apologize for the surprise, but once word spread about what you're doing here, things took on a life of their own. What exactly is happening here, Sergeant Major? Marcus asked, taking in the organized activity around them. After meeting you yesterday, I made some calls to veteran service organizations across the state. Your story, standing up for Harold Jenkins when no one else would, it resonated deeply. Holloway gestured to the gathering. These men and women want to be part of what you're building. They've come to offer support, expertise, and resources. From all over the state? Marcus was stunned. For now, yes. But there are more coming. That's partly why I needed to speak with you urgently. Holloway lowered his voice. We've received word that convoys are organizing. Veteran motorcycle groups, military family. Support organizations, veteran-owned businesses. They're mobilizing from as far away as Houston and Dallas. Convoys? Marcus echoed, trying to process the scale of what Holloway was describing. The first is expected to arrive around noon. Perhaps 200 vehicles. Holloway watched Marcus's expression carefully. This is bigger than any of U.S. anticipated, Mr. Reeves. What began as a simple act of decency has touched something profound in the veteran community. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed. I don't understand. What do they expect me to do? Lead, Holloway said simply. You stood up when it mattered. Now others want to stand with you. Before Marcus could respond, Lisa approached. With her phone in hand. Corporate is calling an emergency meeting. The CEO wants to speak with you directly. The next few hours passed in a blur of phone calls and hastily arranged meetings. The Walmart corporate team, initially alarmed by reports of a gathering in their parking lot, quickly pivoted to embrace the situation when they understood its nature. The CEO personally authorized the use of the store's parking lot and exterior. Space for what was now being called the Veteran Support Rally. By 8 a.m., local news crews had arrived. By 9 a.m., national networks were calling. Principal Chambers texted to say classes would be canceled so students and teachers could attend. What was rapidly becoming a community event. Harold Jenkins arrived shortly after, accompanied by his veteran friends. He looked at the growing gathering with tears in his eyes. All this because you wouldn't let some manager push an old man around, he said to Marcus, his voice thick with emotion. I still don't understand it, Marcus admitted. I didn't do anything special. You recognized my humanity when others didn't, Harold replied. In a world where veterans are often treated as either heroes or burdens, rarely just as people, that matters more than you know. By mid-morning, the Walmart parking lot had been transformed. Corporate had sent a professional event team. With a stage, sound system, and branded banners declaring, proudly supporting our veterans. Local restaurants had donated food. Medical professionals from the community had set up a station offering free health screenings. Veterans Affairs representatives had arrived with laptops and portable printers to process benefit applications. On the spot. At 11:30 a.m., Officer Dawson radioed with news. The convoy is approaching the city limits. At least 150 vehicles by our count. Marcus stood at the entrance to the parking lot, flanked by Lisa, Harold, and Sergeant Major Holloway. As the first motorcycles appeared on the horizon, they came in formation, American flags streaming behind them, engines roaring in unified purpose. Behind them stretched a line of cars, trucks, and vans that seemed to go on forever. The lead rider, a woman in her 50s with silver hair streaming from beneath her helmet, pulled to a stop in front of Marcus. She removed her helmet and dismounted with the fluid grace of someone long accustomed to riding. "Mr. Reeves?" she asked, extending her hand. "Commander Sarah Mitchell, Texas Veterans Motorcycle Alliance. We heard what you did for one of our brothers and wanted to show our support." As they shook hands, more vehicles continued to pour into the designated areas of the parking lot. The motorcycle group alone numbered over 100 riders. Behind them came cars and trucks bearing logos of veteran-owned businesses, military family support groups, and service organizations. A large tour bus painted in camouflage patterns pulled up, and a man in a wheelchair ramp descended from it, followed by 24 other veterans with varying disabilities. "Wounded Warrior Project, sir," the man introduced himself. "We came to offer our expertise on navigating the VS disability systems." The arrivals continued throughout the afternoon. A convoy of 15 gleaming trucks arrived from a veteran-owned trucking company in Dallas. A bus full of nursing students from the community college came to offer health services. Local businesses sent representatives with job offers specifically for veterans. By 2 p.m., the gathering had swelled to over 1,000 people. The Pinewood Police Department had called in officers from neighboring towns to help direct traffic. The mayor had arrived and was speaking with news crews about the spontaneous outpouring of support for our nation's heroes. Throughout it all, Marcus found himself at the center of a whirlwind he never could have imagined. Everyone wanted to speak with him, to shake his hand, to share their stories of struggling to reintegrate after service or battling bureaucratic systems for basic benefits. "I don't know what to say to all these people," Marcus confessed to Sergeant Major Holloway during a brief, quiet moment. "They're looking at me like I have answers, but I'm just a substitute teacher who did what anyone should have done. Sometimes that's exactly what people need, a reminder of what anyone should do, but too few actually do," Holloway replied. "You don't need to have all the answers, Mr. Reeves. You just need to keep asking the right questions. How can we better serve those who served us? How can we ensure no veteran feels forgotten?" As the afternoon progressed, Marcus was approached by a man in a crisp suit who introduced himself as David Mercer, senior advisor to the governor of Texas. "The governor is following events here with great interest," Mercer said. "She'd like to speak with you about potentially expanding your veteran support initiative to a statewide program." Before Marcus could process this, Colonel Chun from the Marine Corps appeared at his side. "Mr. Reeves, the Commandant has been briefed on today's gathering. He's moved by the response and has authorized me to inform you that a Marine Corps honor guard will be dispatched to escort you and your father to the birthday ball next month." The convergence of state government interest and military recognition left Marcus speechless. How had his simple act of standing up for Harold Jenkins catalyzed such an extraordinary response? As if reading his thoughts, Harold appeared beside him. "Overwhelming, isn't it?" the older veteran said quietly. "I feel like I'm watching someone else's life," Marcus admitted. "None of this makes sense." Harold's weathered face creased in a smile. "It makes perfect sense when you understand what you actually did. You didn't just stand up for one old veteran, son. You reminded everyone what we're supposed to stand for." The elderly veteran gestured to the gathering around them. "Look at all these people. Different branches of service, different generations, different political views, doesn't matter. What you did cut through all that noise to something fundamental." Marcus was about to respond when Lisa Winters approached with an urgent expression. "Marcus, we have a situation. The corporate events team wants you to address the crowd. They've set up the main stage, and people are gathering. They're expecting you to speak." "Speak?" Marcus felt a jolt of panic. "I haven't prepared anything. I don't know what to say." "Just speak from the heart," Harold advised. "That's what got us here in the first place." As Marcus reluctantly followed Lisa toward the stage, his phone rang. It was Sunnyvale Assisted Living. His father had seen the news coverage and was becoming agitated, insisting on being brought to the event. "He's not in any condition to travel without medical support," the nurse explained. "But he's quite determined." Marcus was torn between his obligations at the rally and concern for his father. Sergeant Major Holloway, overhearing the conversation, stepped in. "Give me the facility's information," he said decisively. "We have medically trained veterans here with transport capabilities. We'll arrange for your father to be brought safely." Within 30 minutes, as Marcus nervously reviewed hastily scribbled notes for his speech, word came that a team of veterans, including 2 nurses and a paramedic, had departed to transport Richard Reeves to the rally. Standing backstage as Lisa introduced him to the crowd, Marcus felt overwhelmingly unprepared. Through his career as a substitute teacher, he'd become comfortable speaking to classrooms of 30 students, but the sea of faces before him now, over 1,000 strong, was another matter entirely. "Remember why they're here," Harold said quietly beside him. "They're not here for a polished speech. They're here because you showed genuine character." Lisa's voice rose as she concluded her introduction. "A man who reminded us all what it means to stand up for our veterans. Please welcome Marcus Reeves." The applause was thunderous as Marcus stepped onto the stage. Camera flashes popped throughout the crowd. News crews positioned at the front trained their lenses on him. For a moment he froze, overwhelmed by the attention. Then, in the front row, he spotted a group of veterans in wheelchairs. Among them was a young man who couldn't have been more than 25, missing both legs, watching Marcus with intense focus. The sight centered him, reminding him why this mattered. "Thank you for that welcome," Marcus began, his teacher's voice projecting clearly despite his nervousness. "Though I have to admit, I'm still not entirely sure why I'm standing here today." A ripple of appreciative laughter moved through the crowd. "A week ago, I was just a substitute teacher worried about making ends meet. Today, I'm looking out an extraordinary gathering of Americans who have served our country with honor and distinction. The real question isn't why I'm here, it's why you're all here." Marcus set aside his notes, deciding to speak directly. From his heart, "I think I'm beginning to understand. What happened in this store last week wasn't really about me, or even about Mr. Harold Jenkins specifically. It was about something we all recognize is missing too often in our society: the simple acknowledgement of each other's humanity and dignity." The crowd grew quiet, listening intently. "My father served in the Marines for 20 years. He came home with physical and invisible wounds that changed him forever. I watched him struggle not just with those wounds, but with systems designed to help that often seemed to do just the opposite. I watched him retain his dignity even when others didn't recognize it." Marcus paused, gathering his thoughts. "When I saw Mr. Jenkins being treated as a problem rather than a person, something just clicked. I couldn't walk by. Not because I'm special or heroic, but because walking by would have meant betraying everything my father taught me about respect and human dignity." As he spoke, Marcus noticed a commotion at the back of the crowd. People were parting to create a path. Coming through that opening was a medical transport wheelchair being pushed by a veteran in nurse's scrubs. In the chair sat Richard Reeves, his posture military straight despite his medical condition, wearing his Marine Corps cap and a dress shirt someone had helped him into. Marcus's voice caught at the sight of his father. Richard's eyes met his son's, and he raised his right hand, the one less affected by his stroke, in a gesture of encouragement. Drawing strength from his father's presence, Marcus continued, with renewed purpose. What I'm seeing today gives me hope. Not just for how we treat our veterans, but for how we might treat each other as fellow Americans. When we recognize each other's humanity, when we truly see each other, that's when real change becomes possible. Marcus gestured to the various stations set up around the parking lot. Today, I've witnessed veterans helping veterans navigate complicated benefit systems. I've seen medical professionals volunteering their time to provide care. I've seen businesses offering meaningful employment opportunities. All of this emerging organically, not because of a government mandate or corporate initiative, but because people decided to show up for each other. The crowd responded with enthusiastic applause. This is what community looks like, Marcus continued when the applause subsided. This is what America can be when we remember that beneath our different uniforms, political affiliations, and life experiences, we share a common humanity worthy of dignity and respect. As Marcus concluded his impromptu speech, the applause was deafening. People rose to their feet, veterans saluted, and for a moment, the divisions that so often characterized American life seemed to dissolve in a wave of shared purpose. Marcus made his way through the crowd to his father. Richard's eyes shone with pride as his son knelt beside his wheelchair. "Dad, I can't believe you're here," Marcus said, gripping his father's hand. Richard struggled with his limited speech, managing two clear words, "my son." The emotion in those simple words conveyed everything his condition prevented him from expressing more fully. Marcus embraced his father, overwhelmed by the moment. As they shared this private connection amid the public event, David Mercer, the governor's advisor, approached respectfully. "Mr. Reeves, the governor is on the phone. She'd like to speak with you directly." Marcus looked from Mercer to his father, reluctant to step away. Richard nodded his understanding, gesturing for Marcus to take the call. The conversation with the governor was brief but consequential. She expressed her admiration for what was unfolding in Pinewood and proposed establishing a statewide veteran support initiative inspired by Marcus's actions. She wanted him to serve as an advisor, bringing his perspective as both an educator and the son of a veteran. "This isn't just about creating another government program," the governor explained. "It's about changing how we approach veteran support at a fundamental level. Your experience, both with your father and with what you've catalyzed here, offers valuable insight." As the call concluded, Marcus rejoined his father, his mind reeling from the governor's proposal. Before he could process it, Colonel Chun approached with an Air Force general Marcus hadn't met before. "Mr. Reeves, this is General Patricia Roberts, Deputy Director of the Department of Defense Warrior Care Program. She happened to be in San Antonio today and diverted to witness this gathering firsthand." General Roberts extended her hand. "Mr. Reeves, what's happening here is remarkable. The DoD has been working to improve our transition programs for service members returning to civilian life. I believe there are lessons to be learned from how quickly and effectively this community has mobilized." The conversations continued. Throughout the afternoon, as more officials arrived, representatives from the VA, nonprofit leaders, corporate executives interested in veteran hiring initiatives, each brought resources, ideas, and a desire to be part of what was unfolding. By early evening, the gathering had evolved into something like a town hall, with veterans sharing their experiences and needs directly with those in positions to help. Marcus found himself moving between groups, listening more than speaking, connecting people with similar interests or complementary resources. "You're a natural connector," observed Sergeant Major Holloway as they took a brief break near the refreshment area. "That's a rare and valuable skill." "I'm just trying to keep up," Marcus admitted. "This has grown beyond anything I could have imagined." "That's how movements start," Holloway replied. "One person takes a stand, others are inspired to join, and suddenly what seemed impossible becomes inevitable." As dusk fell, the event showed no signs of winding down. Lights had been set up around the parking lot, and the conversations continued with undiminished energy. Plans were being made, connections formed, problems solved in real time. Lisa Winters found Marcus checking on his father, who was beginning to show signs of fatigue. "We've received authorization from corporate to make this a 3-day event," she announced. "They're sending support teams from regional offices to help manage logistics. And they want to discuss expanding your role beyond just the Pinewood store." Marcus looked around at what his simple act of standing up for Harold Jenkins had catalyzed. The gathering had transcended its initial purpose to become something more profound, a demonstration of what was possible when people united around a common cause. "I need to get my father back to his facility," Marcus told Lisa. "He's had a long day." "Of course," she agreed. "The medical team that brought him is standing by whenever you're ready." As they prepared to transport Richard back to Sunnyvale, the elderly veteran approached. Harold had spent much of the day at a table, helping fellow veterans complete benefit applications, his own experience navigating the system proving invaluable. "Your father raised a good man," Harold said to Richard, veteran to veteran. "The kind we need more of." Richard, his speech limited by his stroke, reached out his less affected hand. Harold took it in a firm grip, the two men communicating volumes in that simple contact. As Marcus watched this interaction between two veterans of different generations and different wars, he felt a deep sense of rightness. This was what had been missing, not just in how America treated its veterans, but in how people connected with each other's essential humanity. The medical team arrived to transport Richard, and Marcus prepared to accompany his father back to Sunnyvale. Before they left, Sergeant Major Holloway approached with news that would ensure the movement that had begun in Pinewood would continue to grow. "Just received word," Holloway said, his voice charged with excitement. 3 more convoys are en route from different parts of the state. They'll arrive tomorrow morning. And veterans groups in 5 other states have contacted us about organizing similar events. This isn't ending, Marcus. It's just beginning." As Marcus looked out over the gathering, veterans helping veterans, civilians supporting military families, government officials listening instead of dictating, businesses offering opportunities rather than charity, he recognized that something profound had been unleashed. A latent desire for connection and meaningful support that had finally found expression. What had started with one man standing up for another man's dignity was evolving into something that might genuinely change how America cared for those who had served. And in that evolution, Marcus began to see his own path forward, not just as a substitute teacher filling in temporarily, but as someone with a purpose uniquely his own. The convoy that had arrived that day was just the physical manifestation of a much deeper movement. A movement that recognized that true support for veterans went beyond parades and platitudes to address the real challenges of reintegration, healthcare, employment, and belonging. As he helped settle his father into the medical transport vehicle, Marcus reflected on how completely his life had changed in just a week. From invisible substitute teacher to the catalyst for a veteran support movement that was already crossing state lines. From struggling to make ends meet to fielding calls from the governor and Pentagon officials. Yet what gave him the most satisfaction wasn't the attention or opportunities suddenly coming his way. It was seeing his father's pride, Harold's renewed sense of purpose, and the tangible help being provided to veterans who had long felt forgotten. What Marcus didn't yet know was that the next day would bring even more extraordinary developments. The military convoys arriving overnight would include high-ranking officials from each branch of service. Corporate CEOs would fly in on private jets to announce veteran hiring initiatives. And a surprise visitor from Washington would arrive with an invitation that would take Marcus's simple act of standing up for a veteran in need all the way to the White House. But those revelations awaited tomorrow. For now, As the lights of the Walmart parking lot faded behind them and the medical transport carried his father back to Sunnyvale, Marcus felt a profound sense of peace. Whatever came next, he had rediscovered something essential about himself and about the country he loved. Sometimes, the most powerful action isn't the grandest or loudest, but the simple, human choice to stand up for someone else's dignity when it would be easier to walk away. Marcus arrived early, having spent a restless night processing everything that had happened. He'd barely slept, his mind racing with ideas, possibilities, and the weight of unexpected responsibility. As he pulled into his now reserved parking space, another small symbol of how dramatically his status had changed, he was met by Lisa Winters and a team of Walmart executives who had flown in overnight from the corporate headquarters. "Good morning, Marcus," Lisa greeted him, handing him a cup of coffee. "Hope you're ready for today. It's going to be even bigger than yesterday." "I'm not sure that's possible," Marcus replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. The lead executive, a former Army officer named James Harrington, who now served as Walmart's Vice President of Community Relations, gestured toward the transformed parking lot. "What you've catalyzed here has captured national attention, Mr. Reeves. Our CEO has authorized unlimited resources to support this initiative. We're calling it Operation Respect, inspired by your simple act of showing respect to a veteran when others wouldn't." Marcus felt a familiar sense of disconnect between his self-perception and how others viewed his actions. "I appreciate the support, but I'm still trying to understand why this has resonated so deeply." Harrington's expression grew serious. "Because you tapped into something profoundly important. In a divided nation, you demonstrated that respect for those who served transcends political boundaries. That's a powerful message in today's climate." Before Marcus could respond, a sleek black SUV with government plates pulled into the lot, followed by 2 police motorcycles. The vehicle stopped nearby, and a woman in a tailored suit emerged, flanked by aides and security personnel. "The governor," Lisa whispered unnecessarily, as everyone recognized Governor Miranda Olivares from her frequent television appearances. Governor Olivares approached with an extended hand and camera-ready smile. "Mr. Reeves, it's an honor to meet you in person. What you've inspired here is exactly the kind of community-led initiative my administration wants to support." As they spoke, Marcus noticed a commotion at the main entrance to the event area. A convoy of military vehicles was arriving, not civilian vehicles driven by veterans, but actual military transport trucks and Humvees bearing official insignia. Men and women in crisp service uniforms disembarked, moving with the disciplined precision that marked active duty personnel. Sergeant Major Holloway appeared at Marcus's side, his expression reflecting surprise. "That's a joint service honor. Guard," he explained, "representatives from all branches. This is unprecedented for a civilian event that isn't a national holiday or presidential function." Leading the military contingent was a tall, distinguished officer with the 4 stars of a full general on his uniform. He approached Governor Olivares first, exchanging brief pleasantries before turning to Marcus. "Mr. Reeves, I'm General David Washington, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I've come to personally express the Armed Forces' appreciation for what you've done here." Marcus struggled to maintain his composure. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the highest-ranking military officer in the country and principal military advisor to the president, had come to Pinewood, Texas because of him. "Sir, I'm honored, but I'm not sure I understand the scale of this response," Marcus admitted. General Washington's weathered face softened slightly. "Sometimes, Mr. Reeves, a single act of moral courage creates ripples that extend far beyond what the individual could have imagined. Your defense of one veteran has sparked a national conversation about how we truly honor service and sacrifice beyond mere words." As they spoke, the event area continued to fill with people. Veterans arrived in growing numbers, many having traveled through the night from distant parts of Texas and neighboring states. Local citizens came to offer support. Media crews from national networks set up broadcasting positions. By mid-morning, the gathering had swelled to several thousand people. The atmosphere was extraordinary, part solemn recognition of sacrifice, part celebration of service, and part practical problem-solving as veterans received tangible help with health care, benefits, and employment. Principal Chambers arrived, accompanied by the school superintendent and several school board members. Their expressions conveyed a mixture of awe at the scale of the event and a transparent desire to associate themselves with its success. "Marcus," Chambers began, using his first name for perhaps the first time, "the board has been discussing your situation. In light of your contributions to the community, we'd like to offer you immediate full-time employment with benefits. We can fast-track your certification through an emergency provision." The superintendent nodded eagerly. "We're also creating a new position, Veteran Liaison Officer for the district. With your permission, we'd like to name the program after your father. The Richard Reeves Veteran Support Initiative would connect military families with educational resources and support services." Marcus was momentarily speechless. Just days ago, his position had been in jeopardy. Now they were creating a named program and offering him exactly what he had struggled for years to achieve. "I appreciate the offer," he said carefully. "I'd like some time to consider it, especially the use of my father's name. He should have a say in that." As if summoned by the mention of his name, Richard Reeves arrived, once again transported by volunteer medical staff. Today, however, he was dressed in a formal Marine Corps uniform that someone had altered to fit his changed physique. The nurses had helped him pin his service medals to his chest, and despite his physical limitations, he projected the unmistakable dignity of a Marine. General Washington immediately approached Richard and rendered a perfect salute. "Staff Sergeant Reeves, it's an honor, sir." Richard, his speech affected by his stroke, made a visible effort to respond. "Honor is mine, General." The exchange between the nation's highest-ranking military officer and the retired Staff Sergeant created a powerful image that was captured by dozens of cameras. It embodied exactly what the gathering was about: genuine respect that transcended rank and circumstance. As the morning progressed, Marcus found himself pulled into conversations with an astonishing array of influential figures. Corporate executives discussed veteran hiring programs. Military leaders outlined transition challenges for service members returning to civilian life. Government officials described bureaucratic obstacles within the VA system. Throughout these discussions, Marcus listened more than he spoke, absorbing perspectives and connecting people with shared interests or complementary resources. His natural teaching skills served him well. He asked insightful questions, synthesized complex information, and helped diverse stakeholders find common ground. During a brief break, Harold Jenkins approached, accompanied by a tall, distinguished man in civilian clothes whom Marcus didn't recognize. "Marcus, there's someone you should meet," Harold said. "This is Secretary Thomas Reynolds, Department of Veterans Affairs." The VA secretary extended his hand. "Mr. Reeves, I came to see this gathering for myself. I've been in this position for 18 months, pushing for systemic reforms, but bureaucracies change slowly. What you've accomplished here in just days is remarkable." "I'm not sure I've accomplished anything yet," Marcus replied honestly. "People are connecting and resources are being provided, but the real test will be sustainable change." Reynolds nodded approvingly. "That's precisely the perspective we need. Too often, initiatives generate excitement but lack follow-through. I'd like to invite you to Washington to discuss how we might incorporate elements of this community-based approach into our national strategy." As the secretary moved on to speak with other veterans, Marcus spotted a familiar face in the crowd: Frank, the Walmart manager who had confronted Harold Jenkins the previous week. He looked uncomfortable, lingering at the periphery of the gathering. Marcus approached him. "Frank, I'm glad you came." The manager shifted awkwardly. "I wasn't sure I'd be welcome after. You know." "Of course you're welcome," Marcus assured him. "What happened last week wasn't about you personally. It was about how we all sometimes get caught up in rules and procedures and forget to see the human beings in front of us." Frank nodded, his expression reflecting genuine remorse. "I've been thinking a lot about that moment. I was just doing my job, following policy, but I never stopped to consider why Mr. Jenkins was there in the first place." He hesitated, then added, "My grandfather was a veteran. I don't think he would have been proud of how I handled that situation." "The important thing is what we learn and how we grow," Marcus said. "That's what today is really about, not just helping veterans, but changing how we see and treat each other." As they spoke, a commotion near the main entrance drew their attention. A line of black SUVs with government plates and police escorts had arrived. Secret Service agents emerged, scanning the area with practiced efficiency. Sergeant Major Holloway appeared at Marcus's side, his expression reflecting disbelief. "Marcus, we just received word. The president is en route." 8 of 15 minutes. The president? Marcus echoed, certain he had misheard. Of the United States? Apparently, the viral video and subsequent events caught her attention. This gathering has become a national story about bipartisan support for veterans, something both parties can agree on. She's decided to see it firsthand. The next 15 minutes passed in a blur of security preparations and protocol briefings. The Secret Service established a secure perimeter. Military honor guards took positions. Media crews repositioned for optimal coverage. When the presidential motorcade arrived, the crowd fell silent with anticipation. The president emerged from her armored limousine, waving to the assembled crowd before being escorted to a hastily arranged receiving line where Governor Olivares, General Washington, and other dignitaries waited. Marcus found himself positioned at the end of this line, still struggling to comprehend how his spontaneous defense of Harold Jenkins had culminated in this moment. His father's wheelchair had been placed beside him, Richard Reeves sitting tall. Despite his physical limitations, the proud Marine visible beneath his medical challenges. When the president reached them, she greeted Richard first, thanking him for his service with genuine warmth. Then she turned to Marcus. "Mr. Reeves, your actions remind us that the greatest patriotism often manifests in simple human decency. What you've started here represents the best of America, people coming together across differences to honor shared values and support those who have served." "Thank you, Madam President," Marcus replied, finding his voice despite his awe. "But the credit belongs to everyone who's responded. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time." The president smiled. "Perhaps. But you also made the right choice in that moment, when many others didn't. That matters." She gestured to the gathering around them. "This is what I've come to see. Americans supporting Americans without partisan division. Veterans receiving the respect and practical help they deserve. Communities mobilizing to solve problems without waiting for government directives." After the formal greetings, the president requested a tour of the various service stations. Marcus found himself walking alongside the most powerful person in the world, explaining how veterans were receiving direct assistance with healthcare enrollment, benefit applications, employment opportunities, and housing resources. At the VA benefit station, they met an elderly veteran who had been trying for 3 years to access his entitled benefits. "Today, they processed my application in 20 minutes, he told the president, tears in his eyes. 3 years of fighting the system, and it took 20 minutes when the right people decided to help. The president turned to the VA secretary, who had joined the tour. "Thomas, we need to understand why this happens and fix it. If volunteers in a parking lot can Process applications in minutes. Our formal system should be able to do the same. As they continued the tour, Marcus noticed how the president engaged directly with veterans, listening to their stories with genuine interest. She didn't rush, didn't check her watch, didn't limit conversations to photo opportunities. She was witnessing firsthand the challenges veterans faced and the community-based solutions emerging spontaneously in Pinewood. Near the healthcare screening tent, they encountered a young veteran who had been sleeping in his car for months while waiting for mental health services. "Yesterday, I got an appointment for next week," he explained. "And they found me temporary. Housing starting today. I've been trying for months through official channels with no success." These testimonials accumulated throughout the tour, painting a clear picture. When barriers were removed and resources directly connected to needs, lives changed immediately. The model emerging in the Walmart parking lot was proving more effective than many official programs with far greater funding. After the tour, the president requested a private conversation with Marcus. They were escorted to a small, secure area that had been established for presidential use. "Mr. Reeves, what's happening here is extraordinary," the president began once they were seated. "It's a powerful reminder that Americans still know how to come together when it matters. But gatherings like this eventually disperse. I'm interested in your thoughts on sustainable change." Marcus considered the question carefully. "Throughout this experience, I've observed three critical factors: direct connection between resources and needs, removal of bureaucratic barriers, and recognition of veterans as individuals rather than cases or numbers." The president nodded encouragingly. "The current systems often fail because they're designed around processes rather than people," Marcus continued. "Veterans have to navigate multiple agencies, each with different requirements and timelines. Many give up in frustration." "What would you propose instead?" the president asked. "A single point of access," Marcus suggested. "One application, one verification process, one case manager who coordinates across all services, and local community integration, connecting veterans not just with benefits, but with employment, housing, and social support networks." The president studied him with new interest. "You've given this considerable thought for someone who became involved just days ago." "I've watched my father struggle with these systems for years," Marcus explained. "And I've listened to hundreds of veterans over the past 2 days share similar experiences. The patterns are clear once you really listen. Mr. Reeves, I'd like to invite you to join a presidential commission on veteran services reform," the president said. "We need voices like yours, people who see both the human element and the systemic challenges. Would you consider it?" The invitation was so unexpected that Marcus momentarily lost his ability to respond. A presidential commission? Just days ago, he had been a substitute teacher worried about losing even that tenuous position. "I would be honored, Madam President," he finally managed. "But I should mention that I have no formal qualifications in public policy or veteran affairs." "You have the most important qualification," the president replied. "You care enough to act when action is needed. Everything else can be learned." As they rejoined the main gathering, the president's staff informed her it was time for her formal remarks. A podium had been set up, and the crowd gathered expectantly as she took her position. Her speech was brief but powerful, highlighting the extraordinary community response in Pinewood and announcing the formation of the Presidential Commission on Veteran Services Reform, with Marcus Reeves as a key member. She concluded by reflecting on what the gathering represented: Americans at their best, coming together across differences to honor shared values and support those who had served. When the president departed amid tight security and formal ceremony, Marcus found himself surrounded by people offering congratulations and expressing amazement at the turn of events. Harold Jenkins approached, his weathered face reflecting wonder and satisfaction. "When I sat outside Walmart with my little sign, I never imagined any of this," the elderly veteran said. "I just needed help with one bill. Now look what's happened." Marcus embraced him. "You were the catalyst, Mr. Jenkins. If you hadn't had the courage to ask for help, none of this would have happened." As the afternoon progressed, the gathering continued its work of connecting veterans with resources and support. Corporate announcements flowed steadily, major companies committing to veteran hiring initiatives, financial institutions offering specialized services for military families, technology firms donating equipment and expertise to improve service delivery. By evening, the event had taken on the atmosphere of a community celebration. A local band performed patriotic songs. Food trucks provided free meals. Veterans of different generations shared stories and formed connections that transcended the usual barriers of age and experience. Marcus found a quiet moment to sit with his father, both of them watching the scenes of community connection with shared satisfaction. "Dad, they want to name a program after you at the school district," Marcus said. "The Richard Reeves Veteran Support Initiative. Would that be okay with you?" Richard's eyes filled with emotion. With effort, he formed his words carefully. "Proud of you, son." "I'm proud of you too, Dad," Marcus replied, gripping his father's hand. "Everything good that's happened came from the values you taught me." As darkness fell, Sergeant Major Holloway approached with news that brought the extraordinary events full circle. "Marcus, I wanted you to know, Harold Jenkins's situation has been completely resolved. Not just his heating bill, but comprehensive support. The VA has processed his full benefits package, backdated to when he first applied. He'll receive a substantial back payment, ongoing medical care, and housing assistance." "That's wonderful," Marcus said sincerely. "But here's the remarkable part," Holloway continued. "Harold has asked that his back payment be used to establish a fund for other veterans in crisis. He says he only needed help with one bill. The rest should go to those still struggling." The news touched Marcus deeply. Even after years of being overlooked by the systems designed to support him, Harold's first instinct upon receiving help was to extend it to others. As the second day of the gathering concluded, plans were already forming for the third day and beyond. What had begun as a spontaneous response to a viral video was evolving into something more structured and sustainable. Committees had formed to address specific needs: housing, employment, healthcare, education. Local businesses had committed ongoing support. Government agencies had established direct communication channels with community representatives. Marcus found himself at the center of this evolving movement, not because he sought leadership, but because his simple act of moral courage had revealed his character to others. People naturally looked to him for guidance, not because of formal authority, but because he had demonstrated the values they aspired to embody. Late that evening, as the crowd finally began to disperse, Lisa Winters joined Marcus as he surveyed the transformed parking lot. "Corporate called again," she said. "They want to formalize your position, National Director of Veteran Support Initiatives. Full benefits, substantial salary, flexible location." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I'm grateful for the offer. But with the Presidential Commission and other opportunities emerging, I need to consider where I can make the greatest difference." "Of course," Lisa replied. "Just know the offer stands. What you've built here is exactly the kind of community engagement Walmart wants to support long-term." As Marcus prepared to leave, he noticed Frank, the Walmart manager, helping veterans pack up one of the service tents. The man who had confronted Harold Jenkins just days ago was now fully engaged in supporting the very community he had previously dismissed. It was a small but significant transformation that reflected the larger changes unfolding in Pinewood. The next morning, as Marcus arrived for the final scheduled day of the gathering, he was met by Harold Jenkins and Sergeant Major Holloway. They guided him to a quiet area away from the main activities. "There's something you should see," Holloway said, handing Marcus a tablet computer. On the screen was a map of the United States with dozens of glowing points spread across it. "What am I looking at?" Marcus asked. "Each light represents a veteran support gathering being organized in other communities," Holloway explained. "Inspired by what's happened here. Local Walmarts, other businesses, town squares, community centers. People are creating their own versions of what you started." Marcus stared at the map in disbelief. The movement had spread far beyond Pinewood, beyond Texas, becoming truly national in scope. "This isn't just about veteran support anymore," Harold added quietly. "It's about remembering how to see each other as human beings worthy of dignity and respect. That's what you really started, son." As the final day of the official gathering unfolded, it became clear that what had begun in Pinewood wouldn't end when the tents came down and the convoys departed. The connections formed, systems established, and values reaffirmed would continue to bear fruit in lives changed and communities strengthened. In the months that followed, Marcus would balance multiple roles, serving on the Presidential Commission, advising Walmart's National Veteran Initiative, and yes, continuing to teach. He had declined the full-time corporate position, instead accepting the school district's offer with one modification. He would teach a new course on civic engagement and community service, helping students understand that individual actions could indeed change the world around them. The Richard Reeves Veteran Support Initiative became a model program, connecting military families with educational resources and community support networks. Richard himself, despite his physical limitations, became a beloved figure at school events, his presence a living reminder of the sacrifice and service the program honored. Harold Jenkins never again needed to sit outside Walmart with a sign asking for help. Instead, he became a respected advocate for other veterans, using his newfound influence to ensure that their voices were heard and their needs addressed. Fund established with his back benefits grew through additional donations, providing emergency assistance to veterans facing immediate crises. 1 year after Marcus had stepped between an angry store manager and an elderly veteran in a worn service cap, he stood on the White House lawn, watching as the president signed the Veterans Access and Support Enhancement Act. The bipartisan legislation incorporated many of the recommendations from the Presidential Commission, fundamentally reforming how veteran services were delivered. As cameras flashed and dignitaries applauded, Marcus found himself reflecting on how profoundly his life had changed, and how it had remained the same in all the ways that mattered most. He still believed in the values his father had taught him. He still found his greatest fulfillment in teaching and serving others. He still recognized that the measure of a life well lived wasn't in accolades or positions, but in moments of moral courage when they mattered most. The military convoys that had once surprised Pinewood had long since departed, but their impact remained in transformed systems, renewed commitment, and most importantly, in thousands of individual lives changed for the better. What had begun with one man standing up for another man's dignity had evolved into a movement that reminded Americans of their capacity to see beyond differences to shared humanity. As Marcus often told his students when sharing the story of Harold Jenkins and the extraordinary events that followed, the most powerful choice we ever make isn't about career or status or wealth. It's the choice to recognize the humanity in each person we encounter and to act accordingly. That choice, made consistently in moments large and small, is what changes everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.